Planning a hip replacement? I'm just going to say it. Yes, you should be afraid. Not necessarily of the surgery itself, but of something else that can completely sabotage your recovery. Your doctor won't tell you. It won't be in the little info packet that they give you at the medical center, but it can wreck your recovery, leave you feeling hopeless, and make what's already a hard situation feel like it's 10 times harder. Hi, I'm Pamela. I had a total hip replacement 2.5 years ago at the age of 56. In this video, I'm talking about the common fears many people have before their hip replacement. They are afraid of pain. They may be afraid of anesthesia. If they live alone, they may be afraid of what that might look like for them. Or if they're the primary caretaker for somebody else, they may be afraid of how that will work for them too. And for people that have to return to work, they may worry about losing income while they're out or being pressured by their boss to return sooner than they feel like they're going to be ready to do that. I created this YouTube channel to talk about total hip replacements from a patient's perspective, not just from the doctor's perspective. If you're navigating your own hip replacement journey, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel. I have a whole list of videos that I have planned. And so if you tap the bell icon, you'll get an alert every time I release a brand new video. Please do understand, I am not a medical professional. I am simply sharing with you my experience with the hope that perhaps you'll have better conversations when you talk to your doctor if you're planning a total hip replacement. Sadly, there's a good chance if you talk to your doctor about your fears, your doctor is going to downplay them. That's the thank goodness you're not having a knee replacement conversation. But your fears are meaningful and they're important. And if you don't get them addressed before your surgery, you may not have as good of an outcome after the surgery as everybody thinks that you ought to have. So today, I'm going to be talking about some of the most common fears people have with planning a total hip replacement. Let's dive into one of the scariest fears people might have, which is, what happens if something goes wrong during the surgery? Sadly, we all know of somebody who had a major problem in surgery. Perhaps they didn't make it out of surgery. Perhaps that happened to a friend or a loved one of yours. If that's the case, you've got some really justifiable concerns about what that experience might be like for you to go through anesthesia, endure the actual surgery itself, and then try and hope that you have a good recovery. Talk to your doctor about that. Do not let that doctor downplay your fears. If he tries to kind of brush you off and say, oh, that never happens, or that's never happened to me, or I'll ensure that doesn't happen to you, let him know that this is something that's very important to you. If he's not giving you the reassurance that you need, perhaps try talking to one of the nurses in the doctor's office, or you may need to talk to a counselor or somebody else kind of outside the doctor's office, so that way you can feel a little bit more comfortable navigating your hip replacement if that is something that's a real big fear of yours. As I mentioned before, I had my hip replacement at the age of 56. My mother had a hip replacement in her mid-70s, and she had the surgery at a hospital. So that was really kind of my only experience with hip replacements. So I just kind of naturally assumed my hip replacement would be done at a hospital because that seems like the normal thing to do. So when my doctor told me, no, my hip replacement would be done as an outpatient at the local surgical center, I was very concerned about that. I said to him, well, why is this not going to be done at a hospital? I'd much rather be at a hospital. What my doctor told me was because I was younger in the total hip replacements kind of arena and very healthy, that the best outcome would be from a surgical center where I would be home in my own bed that same afternoon. He said he absolutely has many patients have their hip replacement at the hospital. And he said those are the patients who are perhaps older Or perhaps they've got some other type of medical problem where he just wants to be sure that he has the resources of the hospital around them just in case there is a problem. But I asked him, well, what happens to me if I'm there on the bed under anesthesia in the surgical center and there is a problem? What happens if I go into cardiac arrest or something like that? I've never had any type of surgery like this. I don't know what might happen. And he assured me, of course, that's never happened to him with any of his patients. But he said I would be immediately transferred to the hospital, which was quite close. The next fear I want to talk about is after the surgery. What about people who live alone? Perhaps you don't have any family close by. Perhaps for whatever reason, you don't have a strong social network of people that are just kind of jumping at the opportunity to come and take care of you. The medical staff, whether you're having your surgery at a hospital or at a surgical center, will not let you go home by yourself. You definitely won't be able to drive yourself home. You will not be able to take an Uber. You will not be able to take a taxi. You can't take a bus or a subway. You need an actual human being at the surgical center and being responsible for getting you to your home. If that is your situation, you definitely need to plan ahead. You surely are not the only person that your doctor has done surgery on who lives by themselves. Talk to the doctor staff and ask them if they have any recommendations. There may be services in your area that can help people that have had surgery. There may be benefits with your insurance, if you're using insurance for your surgery, for somebody to be an overnight caregiver or something along those lines. If you're a member of a faith-based organization, reach out to one of the administrative staff and ask them if perhaps there's somebody that can help you out. They may have a whole team of people who volunteer to help people in times of need. You may not even be aware that they have something like that because maybe you weren't ever in a time of need before. Talk to your neighbors. Even if you're not really close to them, you may not want to say, hey, can you go to my surgical center, wait there for me, drive me home, and then, take a shower the next day? But what you can say to people is, hey, I need somebody who can help me out for a day or two after my surgery. Do you know anybody who might be able to help me with that? Or do you know anybody who I can talk to about that? That kind of takes the pressure off the person. But if they're inclined, they might say, oh my goodness, I will absolutely be happy to help you out. What time do I need to be there? Tell me how I can help you. Or they might say something like, well, let me talk to my niece. She's in nursing school, so this could be something that she might really be available to help you with. After your surgery, you probably won't need a full-time caretaker. After the first day or two, when you're at home, it may be something as easy as a neighborhood teenager. Maybe that teenager likes to babysit for little kids, but maybe they'd be perfectly happy stopping by your house for a couple of hours, maybe getting meals together, maybe throwing a load of laundry for you, maybe running errands if perhaps you need something like that. Again, talk to anybody and everybody you know, and you may be able to find the perfect person who is willing to help you out so that way you don't need to have that fear of being by yourself. What if you are the caretaker? That can get a little bit trickier, and some people have put comments in below some of my other videos saying that they're putting off their own surgery because they're the caretaker for other people. Oftentimes it's grandchildren. Sometimes, though, it's their own spouse or older parents who needs their help. Now, for this fear, I'm going to actually give you a little bit of tough love. The question is it really, really, really true that you are the only person who can fill that role? Sadly, if that's you, you're probably not going to agree with me when I'm going to say, chances are good somebody else can take over, even if for a short period of time. If you watch your grandchildren when they get home from school, you need to have a conversation with their parents, and their parents need to find somebody else to take care of them while you are healing. If you are the caretaker for perhaps your elderly mother, Maybe she has Alzheimer's. Maybe she lives with you. You're going to have to find somebody else who can help with her as well. Because if a week has gone by since your surgery and you fall because you're struggling to help her get dressed, you're not going to do her any favors, and you're not going to do yourself any favors either. The truth about this fear is if you don't take care of yourself first, you're not going to be any good to the other people that you love who you need to take care of when you do get healthy. The next fear is pain. How much is this going to hurt? The surgery itself shouldn't hurt at all because you have anesthesia. That's what anesthesia is for. It's the pain after the surgery. Before your surgery, your medical team will prescribe to you your medications and your pain management package. Personally, I was shocked at how much pain medicine my medical team prescribed for me. But even with all that medicine, I did still have pain at night for several months after my hip replacement. If pain is a concern of yours, talk to your doctor, again, well before your surgery. If you can't or shouldn't take narcotics for health reasons or addiction reasons or some other reason, definitely talk to your doctor about that well in advance. They may have some options that may be more appropriate for you. I already did a whole video about pain, so I'm not going to spend a lot more time talking about that here, other than do not let other people downplay your concerns about pain before your surgery or the level of pain that you have after your surgery. I've had people reply to some of my videos saying things like, oh, I took a couple of Tylenol for the first couple of days, and then I just stopped because I didn't need it. I was great. It was no big deal. I don't know why people are so worried about their total hip replacements. For people like that, I am super happy for them. But that may not be your experience. It certainly wasn't my experience. What if you're still working? Depending on what type of job you have, you may be worried about not having any income while you're out, or you might even be afraid of actually losing your job. If you're fortunate enough to work for a larger organization that has good medical care, definitely talk to the Human Resources Department. There may be options for short-term or long-term disability. But my hunch is if you work for that type of organization, you've probably already had that conversation. What I'm a little bit worried about are the people who are more hourly type employees. Those are servers in restaurants, hairstylists, Uber drivers. Those are people who, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So what do we do about that particular situation? That was actually my situation when I had my hip replacement. I am self-employed, and so if I don't work, I don't get paid. I worked with my doctor's office to plan my surgery for the middle of December because that's traditionally a very slow time of the year for the type of work that I was doing at the time. Now, I planned it months and months and months in advance. I really hustled starting in September and all the way through those first 2 weeks of December. I wanted to be sure that I was getting as much business and as much income in as I could to sustain myself for the end of December and potentially for well into January. My hope was I would be back at work in early to mid-January, but I wasn't sure. So I wanted to be sure I had enough resources to sustain me if I wasn't able to work as much in January after my surgery. If you have a desk job or the type of job where you can work at home, your boss may be asking you, when can you come back to work? I get it. Work has to go on even if you've had a total hip replacement. And so it's a viable question of your boss to say, when are you going to be back at work? I strongly recommend that you give yourself more time versus less time. You can always come back early if you're bored and have nothing to do, but I don't want you to be in a situation where you agree to, oh, sure, I can do Zoom meetings from my couch, the week after your surgery. Trust me on this. If you're still taking pain pills, you do not want to be on Zoom meetings for your business. That's just a recipe for disaster. Give yourself plenty of time to recover, even if your boss is pressuring you to work part-time, assuming you don't need to. This next fear is about all the horror stories we have heard about people who had total hip replacements that went wrong. Maybe somebody's cousin isn't able to bend their hip at all whatsoever because the doctor screwed up. Maybe your neighbor's brother-in-law dislocated his hip twice in the weeks after surgery. Maybe your dog groomer had a total hip replacement and now the left side is shorter than the right. Here's the deal. Those dramas do happen, that's why we hear about them, but they are not the norm. When I started mentioning to people that I needed to have a total hip replacement, I was shocked at how many people I knew had hip replacements, but it just never came up in conversation because it was never a big deal for them. In fact, before my surgery, I was in yoga class crying because I was trying to do child's pose, which is supposed to be one of the easiest poses in all of yoga. Come to find out, two of the other students and the teacher had all had hip replacements too. So they kind of kindly huddled around me and let me know everything was going to be fine. Yes, sometimes doctors make errors, but more often, people don't always follow their doctor's instructions. Sometimes people have accidents. Sometimes people are foolish. I actually have a whole nother video I created about 3 things that I no longer do after my hip replacement. Spoiler alert for that video, I still run after my hip replacement and I have my doctor's blessing to do that. Some people are younger, healthier, and recover great. Other people might be older. They might be a little or a lot overweight. Perhaps they don't cut back on smoking the way that their doctor recommended after their total hip replacement. People like that are going to have a slower recovery. Some people might have additional medical challenges totally separate from their hip replacement, but those other medical challenges might make their recovery slower. The most important thing I want you to take out of this video is please do not compare yourself to other people. Please don't compare yourself to me, to your friends, to your cousin, or to your brother-in-law. Everybody is different and everybody's recovery is going to be different. Some people love to share the gory details of every single medical issue that they have. You know who those people are. They're showing you pictures. That's kind of part of their drama. Don't pay attention to them. Pay attention to the people who you know who had a perfectly great experience with their hip replacement. Keep in mind, this is not a competition. There is no trophy for taking no pain pills or for walking the dog the day after surgery. It just doesn't work that way. The best way to manage your fears is to be kind to yourself and ask for the help that you will need. If you've got other fears that you're not sure how to manage, put that in the comments, and all of us as a community, perhaps we can help you feel a little bit more comfortable with those. And if you want more honest, unfiltered conversations about what life is like after a total hip replacement, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon. That way you'll be notified every time I create